Hello and welcome to the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. My name is Ross Le Quesne. I'm bringing my 25 years industry experience together with leading experts around the globe to give you the insights on how to live a better life and grow a profitable mortgage broking business that you are proud of. Welcome to another edition of the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. I'm Ross Le Quesne, and today we've got Craig Vaughn. He's the director of MAP Home Loans, and you may also know him as the founder and product manager of Broker Engine. Welcome, Craig.
G'day, Ross. Great to be with you.
I hear a lot of good things about what you've done in the broking space and also with Broker Engine. So I'm really keen to unpack a bit about what's behind the success and what's led to the creation of Broker Engine today. Before we get into it, I'm keen to understand a bit of the background, and so tell me how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, look, look, no one sort of comes out of high school, I guess, knowing what a mortgage broker is. So I actually went through law school and graduated law school in around 2005, and went to work as a lawyer for a short period of time. I was paid 30 grand a year, stressed out of my brain, working, big days, and the lawyers above me didn't look like their lives were any better. So pretty early on in my lawyering career of bankrupting people and all this sort of pretty depressing stuff, I gave it up. I gave it up pretty quickly. So I went through law school for 5 years and ditched that. And I went back to, when I was going through law school, I was a croupier at the casino dealing roulette and blackjack and things like that. And I went back there. It was a fun place to work and good money at the time, and saved up for my first house. And it was in the process of buying my first house, a little modest $287,000 3-bedroom in Daisy Hill, south of Brisbane, that the mortgage broker comes around. It was my first introduction to a mortgage broker, and that's where it sort of started. I started asking, what do you do? How do you get paid? And all this sort of stuff. And that's how I began my career in mortgage broking, basically, buying my first house.
Yeah. So was it a case of, hey, I think I can do it better than him, or hey, he's so good, it looks interesting, I'm gonna have a crack at this myself?
Look, it looked interesting, and one of the books I read when I was like 18 was a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and it was all about everyone's probably read it. It's all about building passive income, and it's so passive income was always something that I was always looking for, but I didn't know where to find it. And as soon as I heard the word trail and the concept of building up this passive income, that sort of sold me a little bit. Also, the idea of helping people as well. I mean, it looked like helping people get their first homes and things like that was kind of exciting. It was a big risk at the time, like I had just given up 5 years of law. My family was probably I don't know what they were thinking actually at the time, but so it was a bit of a risk. But yeah, I gave it a crack and feel very fortunate to have done so. If I hadn't done it, I'd still be a lawyer, which would be a shit life. So yeah.
So isn't that a great book, The Rich Dad Poor Dad? And for any brokers who haven't read it, if you read just the first half of it, you get the basic concepts. And I think those graphs in the book in terms of how the rich get their money and how the middle class is sort of buy liabilities rather than assets, and the whole thing around a passive income. And I often reflect, and being in the business where we built over $1 billion loan book, and obviously I still receive income from that today. So I know the value and power of building that recurring income. And then it's interesting, you've also got into a software business which also has that sort of recurring income from not trailing, but from a subscription model. Sure. But it's a similar sort of business where you get the recurring sort of revenues, right?
Look, I didn't set out to start a software company, and I certainly would, advise against it generally. It's a tricky game, but if you can get the flywheel spinning, and you can get an app up and running, it's very hard. Like until I think people looking from the outside, it's easy to start a software company. It's easy to do it, and it's hard. It's harder than you would think. And but yeah, if you can get that flywheel spinning, you can get users signing up and sticking around, and a stable app and a stable product and so on. Then look, the subscription model's good, but I think 99% of startups fail. So yeah, it's a risky game. Far far more profitable to remain a mortgage broker. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so that you got started. So that was back in 2005?
25, 26, something like that. Yeah. I think 2006 when I started. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And so tell me, what were the early days like in terms of how did you go about getting clients back in the early days?
Yeah. So I got sort of lucky. I initially I was going to go out by myself, and just a solo broker, knowing nothing, a 26-year-old kid or something, and quickly within a month worked out that you're going to run out of friends and family pretty quickly. And to be honest, probably shouldn't be practicing on friends and family. It's a good way to, lose them. So I ended up making a decision at the time to work at a company called ABC Mortgages, and they paid, it was like 40%. You got 40% up front, 40% trail. They took 60-60, you got 40-40. But it was, 40% of a lot. It was the early stages of realestate.com, 100% mortgages. It was just leads galore. You literally could get, anyway, unlimited leads. So made the decision pretty quickly to go the 40-40 model, and get a lot of that rather than, 90% of not much. And that worked really well. You burn their leads, like you learn on their leads, you burn their leads, and you sort of, and obviously win quite a few as well. But that's how I sort of got the start. I, made a decision to go there, and thank God for that. Yeah.
This is an interesting point, and it's a point that I quite often, have discussion with experienced mortgage brokers, because if you look at the profit margins, and obviously I look at the profit margins of a lot of the businesses that I coach, and you look at the profit margins may only be, around that 40 to 50% marks in a lot of mortgage broking businesses, right? So then you look at the opportunity like the one that you were, presented early on in your career. Hey, I'm not working to really earn at this. I'm working to learn, right? So how am I actually going to learn more? Am I going to learn more in a business where I've got an abundant amount of leads? Yes, I might not be getting 100% of the commission, but I'm getting 40%, which, hey, if I was a business owner with all these overheads, I might only end up with 40 to 50% in my pocket anyway. So I'm guaranteed the business coming in, and it's allowing me to really learn my craft. And, I think, this broking business is a bit of a Me Too business, that people, are in these positions and maybe they're working under someone, and they're in a position where they're earning good money and they don't have any other expenses, but they want the next thing. But quite often the amount of experience that they're gaining from being in that type of role is invaluable to where their career may progress. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I remember with the 9 months of being at that firm with unlimited leads, sitting at my desk one day and finally and this is unlimited leads, so I talk to a lot of clients, burning a few leads, seeing a variety of different different sort of lending types and things like that. It was 9 months of full time before I remember sitting at my desk thinking, I actually feel comfortable now. I feel comfortable that when I get on the phone with that client, I actually know what I'm talking about. I actually broadly know the answers. 9 months, and that's 9 months of 60 hours of just constant struggle and battle, and so 100%. All new brokers, if you're starting out, definitely go somewhere that's got plenty of leads so you can learn, for sure.
And that, the other way to do it, and the way to give your potential brokers exposure, is to put them in like some sort of loan processing role, whether it's a para broker. I used to call them a loan approval solutions partner, because they weren't an assistant, they were a partner in my business. And by growing them in that role, by me doing 50 mortgages a month, they're going to get a lot more exposure to a lot more deals than them trying to write 5 on their own, right? So in 10 months they get the exposure to 1 month working with the scenarios that I'm showing them, right? So and obviously the conversion rates are going to be a lot higher than if they were to become a broker straight away. So definitely agree with you in terms of a great training ground to get exposure to as many loans as you possibly can.
Well, look, I don't do loans for friends and family to this day, except for when I do, except for the one time I do, but I don't do them. I avoid it like the plague. It's always the loan that goes bad. And I relearn this lesson every time. I did a loan for my brother-in-law a couple of months ago. I haven't done a loan for friends and family because this is a vanilla deal. I'll just do it. I'll help them out. I'll do it, right? Sure enough, it's the one loan, that goes wrong. You get a valuation comes in and the valuers put it at a risk rating of 5. And it's like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I relearn that lesson over and over again. I do not do loans to friends and family, and every 2 or 3 years, I'll relearn the same lesson. But yeah, anyway, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's obviously the start, and then you grow. And I can see in the back there you've got some sort of top AFG sort of broker awards. So talk to us about the transition from starting to being a top AFG broker.
Yeah, look, I think about 2000, and the GFC hit somewhere in there, and 100% lending went away. But during my experience working with all these leads, I developed a bit of a niche in non-resident lending. So clients in Australia that were on a visa, a spouse visa, or living abroad, expats or whatever. And so I developed a bit of niche. So I ended up going out on my own, starting sort of MAP Home Loans, which was focused around that niche of temporary and non-residents. And I wouldn't have known that niche had I not had that initial experience at ABC Mortgages with unlimited leads and seeing what's out there. And so I just targeted this particular niche, dominated that as far as lots of marketing and so on, and ended up sort of growing. I think I was like, I don't know, certainly top 5 broker in Queensland for AFG, for a few years in a row, just on the back of targeting that, just focusing on my niche and on great client experience, and sort of trying to automate the process a bit so I wasn't sort of bogged down in the weeds too much. Yeah.
Back when non-resident lending was a bit easier than it is today, right?
Look, I think it's funny because often brokers say to me, this bank's pulled out of the non-resident market or whatever, and it's like, look, as long as I've got one lender, as long as there's one lender, I'm good. Because the less people out there that can do a non-resident mortgage, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, look, definitely there's still options, but it's certainly a lot tougher these days. Yeah.
All right. So then that led you, and again, I think there's some great points. And as you mentioned previously, I often talk about the power of a niche, and a lot of people are scared to niche because they think it's actually going to exclude them from doing other types of business. But just confirm for us, in your point, did it exclude you from doing the refinance, the first time buyers, that sort of thing?
No, look, it didn't. I targeted that niche, and then you would get, when they got citizenship, you would now be doing their refinances, you'd get their friends and family. Just by my marketing was focused around a niche. It didn't mean that's all I did. Certainly I wouldn't do things like construction, development finance or super fund loans or anything like that. But I just stuck to my niche, what I was good at. Every now and then I would learn the lesson. It was like, I'll do that super fund loan. Yeah, okay. I'll do it. And then of course it takes 30 hours and you stuff it up because you don't know how to do it. So you learn the lesson. Okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to stick to my niche. So every few years again, you relearn the lesson. But certainly sticking to the niche is key, so you can provide that great client experience every time. And yeah.
Good. So now we're top 5 broker in AFG. When does the sort of the thought of creating something like Broker Engine and the need to have these systems and processes sort of come into your business? Is that something that was always there? You always had that highly systemized business, or was something that you sort of developed out of necessity?
Yeah, developed it out of necessity, really. So in around 2011, I started building systems. Some of your listeners or yourself might remember a software solution called Act by Sage. It's still around. Yep. And so I ended up, starting on Act. It was quite simple and pushed that as far as I could. But ultimately what I was doing was I was trying to solve challenges in my own practice. I was trying to have it so that I was just focused on loan strategy, structure, talking to clients. And I had sort of a really good systems and processes where, we automated what we could and we delegated what we could to loan processes or whatever. And I didn't want a practice that was, heavily reliant on having a gun CSM or a gun loan processor, a unicorn, they're hard to find, hard to keep, hard to retain. So I wanted a practice that was very much technology driven, that my team could just follow the bouncy ball. And ultimately, so I was building my own solutions for my own practice. And then look, in 2015, 2016, Broker Engine sort of came about. It wasn't on purpose. It sort of just evolved into, from interest from other brokers, sort of evolved into its own platform. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And, we spoke just in the start, talking about one of the things you mentioned was, fireproofing, not firefighting. I love that sort of whole concept. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about how brokers can, fireproof rather than firefight.
Everything is a trade-off. So for us, we do a lot of fireproofing, meaning that, we will complete checklists at given stages of the loan. Obviously, we will, I never want a client to ever call me, I don't want the client to ever call me. If the client calls me and says, when's my first repayment due, or where's my loan up to, or, what's my repayment amount, or whatever it might be, I think I should have already told you that, right? So I never want the client to ever call me. So fireproofing means things like checklists. It means things like pre-sponding, answering the question before it's asked. It means things like, obviously, constant updates, even if there is no update. Fireproofing is just really all about making sure the client never calls you, basically. It is trade-offs because it will take you, let's talk about a deal. It might take half an hour longer for a deal, to do that 5-minute checklist at formal approval, to do the 10 minutes at settlement to get all the repayment details and plug it in, to prepare a advice at submission or ready to settlement with where the authority to debit details are coming from. It'll take extra time, right? But the trade-off is you spend that half an hour of that fireproofing and, hopefully it means you'll save at least half an hour every deal from an aggregate by not having to roll it back because the pricing wasn't applied, or, someone sent the discharge authority in when it shouldn't have been because it was a fast refi, or, whatever it might be. So the idea really around fireproofing is taking that little bit extra time to make sure everything's good, rather than sort of sitting there being a bit reactive and waiting for, the next fire, basically.
In doing, up to 100 loans a month in our business, even when you've got a small percentage of deals that, have to come back for a rework. And I was sitting in a broker's office this morning, we're having the same conversation, right? He was talking about the need for checklists in terms of collecting that upfront documents. And I do a lot where I'll do a Kaizen process with some elite clients, and I'll map out the business, and we'll go through two things, right? Lead time and complete and accuracy. And the amount of time that it takes when something hasn't been fireproofed and goes off the rails. And when we look at lead time, it's not just the time to fix the problem. It's the time that it takes you actually get the email out of your email for someone to actually process it and request it. It's the time to document the email, to request that from the client, to try calling, and then the time waiting for that information to actually come back. In some cases, it can be up to a week to solve a MIR or and all the follow-up touch points that happen within that process, right? So even if you have a small percentage of deals, let's say you've got 10%, that's still 10 hours times 2 is probably 20 hours where you sort of wasted just on that one error, right? That could have easily been fixed if some fireproofing was done up front.
It's also the stress and the angst, missing deadlines, having to bother your BDMs because you didn't check that the pricing was applied, and the docs have to be rolled back. And so now your BDMs are pissed off because they got to go and sort out your, problem that you probably should have picked up on at formal approval as part of your checklist. And then it's the poor client experience. One of the first things if you want referrals, as we all know, is to do the job, right, and make it easy for the client. And it's the time and it's the poor client experience as well. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It's it's the outcome, and quite often I have that conversation about what you're saying about and it's an argument around, and 50% of brokers will be on the fence.
Sure.
Of, oh no, I can't request all the documents up front.
Yeah.
And the other, like it's a better client experience. If I get all the documents up front, I can get a better solution, and I can come to a result a lot faster and get your loan a lot, processed a lot quicker for you, right? So it's about, the customer experience. So to me, the outcome is, hey, I want to get that client a loan approved in the fastest way possible. Where for some clients, the client experience, I don't want to bother them with too much information up front. So the view of what makes a client experience is different in a couple of different camps, right?
Sure.
But when you get
same thing applies to the fact find, the 50-50 on the fact find. Do you get the client to fill it out, or, do you pre-fill it or fill it out for the client? And it's the same debate's raging at the moment, and probably will rage forever. But yeah, look, sorry, not to take you off your path, but, we, for example, part of my client experience is not having the client fill out paperwork. I want to make it super easy for the client. So we'd get the documents from the client, and then we would pre-fill the fact find with the information from the documents. We've already got the information there. Why are we asking them to fill out where they work, or, what their bank balances are when we have it all? So anyway, back to you, sorry.
Yeah, I love that point though. I think that was a really good point, because, I know CBA did a survey a few years back in terms of why customers chose to do loans with brokers. I remember the number one answer that came back on the survey that they did was because brokers make the process easier for the client, right? So in focusing on a world where, the client is in the center of the transaction, how can we do everything in our business to make it easier for the client? And I'm with you in terms of, if you've got all that information, the classic is, like a fixed rate request form, right? So, I always used to tell my staff, hey, don't just send it out blank. Send it out with we've got all this information, pre-populate it and send it out. And, I'm the same. I'm, one of the banks that I deal with, I hate when they send me out a form and I have to complete all of the information, all the assets, and they've already got all that information, right? Why should I, as the customer, complete that information? So I think it's from a client experience point, it's a game changer. So let's talk on a bit more on client experience, right? So in terms of client experience, and one of the things that we were sort of talking just before we got on air as well was about how you can present solutions in real time, right? And to me, with the technology, and I think, where business is moving, this is exciting, right? And I think, 53% of loyalty is built at the point of sale, but a lot of brokers are hiding behind emails and not sort of getting on the front foot. So I'd love you to talk to me a bit on this point, and what brokers can do to, to sort of sexy up the way that they sort of present.
No, I'm glad you said that. 53%. Yeah, I didn't know that number. But look, one of the things I started doing in 2011 when I was sort of trying to scale my practice was I didn't want to be out 5 nights a week, right? So I started doing sort of non-face-to-face, and a lot of trial and error over the last sort of, first year or two. But the biggest thing that changed the game when doing non-face-to-face, and this is going back, 10 years, was presenting solutions in real time. What it means is, back then I was on Skype, getting on the Skype, sharing your screen and actually walking them through step by step, this is what we talked about. This is what you're after. This is the funding. This is the policy. Then we go on to the rates. Then we go on to, at the end, talk about debt recycling, or talk about, how interest works for first home buyers, or whatever it might be, right? But it was all, the biggest change to the process was presenting in real time. And it's another trade-off. I still, like, a lot of brokers ask me today, like, why do you do that? I send them like an article on how I do it, and they're like, oh, that takes an extra hour, or an extra hour to do that presentation. And it's like, it's a trade-off, because yes, it is going to take you an extra 30, 45 minutes or an hour to prepare it and present it in real time, as opposed to a 5-minute email and, where you summarize it for the client. But you kill objections in real time. So, you can answer objections in real time. You're building a lot of trust and rapport with the client. You take the focus away from rate by, selling, I hate to use the word selling, but you take the focus away from rate by talking about structure or strategy. You find something to sell the client on other than rate. And every now and then, I learn a lesson every couple of years. I like to relearn lessons for some reason. Every now and then every now and then I go, I'm busy today. I'm just going to email this one. And sure enough, something goes wrong. When you're doing that presentation in real time, a couple of things happen. One, everyone's on the exact same page about what you're going for, what the issues are. You've answered all their questions. You've also set yourself up as the expert. I had a broker the other day, Travis, saying that, he was talking to a client and they'd talked to 3 brokers and no one had jumped on a call with this client and actually walked them through a full strategy on how they're going to do it. No one, right? So immediately gets a deal. Doesn't just get the deal now, but gets to refinance or whatever in 2 or 3 years' time, because you are now the go-to guy. So it's a trade-off. Yes, it's going to cost you an extra 45 minutes or something like that up front. But the trade-off, the future benefits with stickier clients, referrals, repeat business. I think I might have had one clawback in 15 or 16 years that I didn't expect. That didn't, it just came out of the blue. And a lot of that, I think, is because that initial presenting solutions in real time and really educating the client about educating the client about the whole process. Yeah,
beautiful. And I was going to unpack that because there was so much gold in the hat that I'm going to unpack it, right? So in terms of, if we look at it, right, so I think that what I took away from that is, by presenting solutions in real time, one, we're selling an actual solution, and a way to be transactional is to just sell on rate, right? A way to be relational is to sell on solution. Right. So if we're selling on rate alone, what are they comparing us in the future when something comes up?
Yep.
Right. Right. So you're, as you said, you're much likely to have retention issues if you're selling purely on rate alone.
Yep.
And if you're selling on solution, which is what you spoke about in terms of really adding value at the point of sale, where we're challenging, we're educating, we're talking about things like wealth creation, property investment, debt recycling, those types of things, and we're providing a long-term solution because and if I look back to my mortgage broking days, I did a lot of property investment, right? So the wealth that you can create someone by, freeing up the borrowing capacity to buy another property, if it's a $500,000, property, if that property is then going to grow each and every year at, let's say $35,000 per annum, right? So that $35,000 per annum that we're going to grow through their property portfolio growth is a lot more than the 0.1 or 2% in interest rate, right? But if you don't package that up and you don't package that up as the solution in terms of, what that long-term plan is, the only thing they're going to go off is the transaction, which is the rate. So, so much value in terms of what you're saying about presenting that and handling the solutions, the referrals, the repeat business. I'm sure the same brokers that say to you, oh, it takes too much time, are probably the same brokers that are sitting there doing a lot of the admin stuff and doing a lot of the contact post the actual solution, right? So where you and I probably do the solution, we do a handover, we have teams that run that. They're probably the go-to person after that. Whereas if you realize the money is in this conversation, then you'll change the way you view this whole conversation.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I noticed when I was growing my practice was, you'd be busy, starting, you'd be really busy. And then you would cut off a piece and you'd delegate that out. And you'd be like, I've just delegated out, 5 hours of work for the week. Great, I got 5 hours back. And what happens is you somehow that you end up getting more business coming in to fill that 5 hours. I don't know why, but you get more business coming in to fill the 5 hours. Just back to the presentation one, one question I always ask, even first home buyers is, what's your plan for the property? Is this a stepping stone property to your next, your next one? Is it going to be an investment property? Looking for something to sell them on, right? Because if they are a first home buyer, but they've got plans to buy investment property, as you said, then you're pitching that to them, how this structure now is going to help them do that in the future. So yeah.
Beautiful. So is there anything else that you want to add in terms of that whole client experience around, again, maybe it's something that you do within Broker Engine, or the reason that you put that in Broker Engine? Because I think it's important to understand, yes, this is the tool, but what sits the thinking behind the tool? And because you're the founder and you've done a lot, what is the thinking of the client experience that sort of goes behind the tool?
Yeah, look, that you can, I think there's a misconception, maybe. You can automate a great client experience. You can. I think some people might think that, oh no, it's got to be me, drafting that email just for that client at formal approval. No, you can automate a really great client experience. So Broker Engine is all about allowing you to build the exact experience you want. At settlement, at formal, at docs issued, whenever it might be, you can build whatever experience you like into there. Some things that I've done for 10 plus years is, sending out what we call a shock and awe pack. So when a new lead comes in, they get a posted shock, what we call a shock and awe pack, which can be different things. But clients love to see that you follow a process. They love to see a process unraveling, and Broker Engine allows you to basically build in your amazing client experience, so it's automated and your team can just follow the bouncy ball.
Yeah, exactly right. And it gives you confidence, right? When you say clients love that, in terms of, and if you look at the elements of what makes a great sale, I know you, I like you, I trust you, right? Part of, and probably the hardest one to build, is that trust element. But I think by having a solution in the terms of a system or a process that you're following, one of the things that it does is it gives that client the confidence that, hey, I'm dealing with a professional organization, right? So, if I sort of bring to mind a customer experience, something like, I don't know if you've ever done the bridge climb in Sydney, right? But from the moment that you walk in, it's such a well-oiled process.
Yep.
That it makes a really great customer experience, because the way they do it is really, really well. And like it's a formulated sort of process, but it creates an outstanding customer experience at the end of the day. So I think what you're saying around creating that process that gives clients confidence is great. Awesome. Anything else? An example of, ways that brokers can use tech to deliver a better client experience.
There's heaps of tech solutions out there. I won't sort of get too much in the weeds on that, but I think, maybe not quite to your answer, but are you familiar with the BOLT system, the bull, owl, lamb, and tiger? Have you heard of that one before, Ross? Around the different client profiles. So this is one that I've sort of, a guy from St. George, my BDM from St. George 8 years ago, put me onto this BOLT system. And effectively it goes back to that presenting in real time. And there are sort of 4 types of clients, right? There's the bull, which is that's your CEO, busy, just get straight to the point. Yeah. There is the lamb, that's your mum, and she's more about the lovey-dovey, security for the family. There is the owl, that's the accountant, right? He's all about the numbers. And then there's a tiger. I don't quite get the tiger, or also known as a peacock. I don't quite get that one. But the other 3, when I come to present solutions in real time, I'm just going back to that one, you pick up in some of your questions around who they are. If it's that CEO bull type, man, you're straight to the point. You're not waffling, you just bang, 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 bang. Normally the quickest appointment you ever do, 20 minutes, and they'll sign it straight away, right? The lamb, you've got to obviously talk about security for the family and how this is going to, the kids can paint the walls and whatever. The owls, like numbers. So I think it's not a tech question, but certainly tailoring, when you're presenting solutions in real time, you can actually tailor it for the type of client you're talking to.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that's important. And I think that's, when you're presenting online, that's why visuals are so important, right? Because you don't have, and I teach a lot of this in my program in terms of, you don't have that rapport power. So, in a face-to-face appointment, you spend a lot more time, naturally building rapport. There's the social cues, there's the body language, there's all those things. And quite often in those types of appointments, I would never even pull out a laptop, right? Because it's more about the face-to-face. But when you're in a dynamic like on Zoom, it changes, right? It now becomes about your presentation power. And so it's using the tools to be able to talk through a visual, which is a lot more powerful, over Zoom. Because, and I asked a group of clients the other day, how much time do you spend doing the whole rapport thing on Zoom? And it's virtually none, right? Straight down to business. And, that sort of hour-long appointment is down to probably 20 or 30 minutes when you do it over Zoom. So this is why the need for a presentation becomes really important, right? Because as you say, it's not transactional. It's the value add part of the appointment that challenges, educates, and really ties everything together. So I can't stress enough, especially in this sort of virtual world that we're in now, that get off the phone, get on Zoom, and use the tools, right? Use the tools. Beautiful. So I mean, so much value hearing from yourself in terms of your whole journey in sort of broking to sort of using the knowledge and the pain points that you've gained to put it into a tech solution, which is I've got many clients that use Broker Engine and rave about it. And I know in speaking with you and the team, you've got plans to continue to evolve it over the next coming years, which is exciting as well. But in terms of, one of the questions I ask in sort of closing is, if you were sort of to give one piece of advice for somebody who is really looking at scaling and taking their business to the next level, what would be your sort of one sort of tip for them?
Oh, look, I think it's all the ones one tip, probably start hiring a bit earlier than you think you need them, maybe. But everything we just talked about, probably hiring and starting to fireproof. Get your systems in order, and hiring would be probably the main tip. Start to fireproof. Because as you scale, that one little error ends up, costing you hours and stress. So start fireproofing early on and start building on your systems. Like, I'm still building my workflows to today, still tweaking. They're always changing, always changing things. And start early. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that. Right? I was doing a podcast with Annie Kane this week, and on sort of the habits of being a $1 billion broker. And I switched it around and asked her. I said, "Look, you interview so many people. What would be your number one tip on sort of what brokers are telling you?" And she said exactly the same point that you said. Right? I wish I'd hired sooner. And I think that's a great message for a lot of brokers in terms of, and I said this to one of my clients the other day, if you can afford 3 months worth of salary, pull the trigger. Like, what have you got to lose, right? Most brokers are telling you it's the one thing that they wish they should have done sooner. Go ahead and pull the trigger. And I think in summary, in terms of summarize what we've talked about today, I think from looking at the fireproofing your business, and we do that by creating a really good systems and processes. And to be in a business, like you said, that's constantly evolving. We're not in a business, we're in a practice, because we go in every day, we practice to try to get better each and every day. And then obviously creating that great client experience, which comes down to presenting solutions in real time, because that's where the magic happens. That's where the loyalty's built, and that's where you're going to get the repeat and referral business. So it's been a great chat. So thanks again, Craig.
Good on you, Ross. Thanks again.
All right, this has been another episode of the $1 Billion Broker podcast. If you'd like to stay in touch, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One, subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast channel. Two, jump onto the Facebook group, $1 Billion Broker for mortgage brokers. Or three, jump onto billiondolarbroker.com.au and you can make an inquiry there. And just, Craig, if people want to get in contact with you and are interested in your software solution in Broker Engine, what can they do, bud?
There's a go to brokerengine.com.au. On the top right, there is a big green button for book a demo.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks again, Craig.